we'll only be using this to promote future webinars and some of the content. I may use some of the key content that we use today as well as part of our assets in the business, but I won't be divulging anything that you don't want me to divulge. So today we're going to be looking at hybrid selling. And what we've got as in terms of outcomes for today, let's talk about what I'd like to get from today's session for you. I'd like it to be interactive. I'd like to give you guys the opportunity to interact with each other and have some conversations around what's going on for you, give you an opportunity to talk to other like-minded sales and business professionals. I'd also like you to discover the key challenges that people are facing with hybrid selling. And well, I'll be sharing some of those key challenges, so it hopefully helps you with context in your own businesses. And then we'll look at 3 principles that help us to address those challenges. And we'll look at a top 12 tips for selling in a virtual environment as part of that hybrid sales process that we're now following. So that's the plan for today. And then finally, at the end, I'd like to invite you to complete a scorecard, so that you can do that offline. We won't be doing that in the webinar. But that scorecard is going to help you to discover your own sales and influencing score. So it's become really popular with a lot of the clients that I work with, just the way to benchmark where are you with your selling capability. It's really valuable. I'll show you that at the end, and I'll give you that as a follow-up from today's session as well. So that's the plan. And before we start, many of you I know, but some of you I don't know, so you may not be familiar with my background. So just as an introduction, my name is Justin Leigh. I am the founder of Focus for Growth, and we are a sales and business leadership program organization. We run sales and business leadership programs for many of our clients. We run some open programs as well. And this workshop and webinar is an example of one of our open kind of workshops. If you're not connected with me, please feel free to do so. You can connect me on Linktree at Justin Leigh, Leigh, or I've got a QR code coming up later on. If you want to scan the QR code, it will take you through to all of the channels and options for connecting. And I'm really fortunate. I've got my career spans around 31, 32 years in sales, key account management, sales leadership, and business leadership. And more recently as an executive coach and running my own organization. And over the years, won a number of different awards, which I won't talk about too much. The one I'm probably most proud of, to be honest, is the best-selling author of the business book, Inspire, Influence, Sell. And we managed to with the publishing team, managed to get that to best-selling position on Amazon twice, once in November when it launched and a second time in February for the Kindle edition. So we've had some really good success and some amazing feedback on that book. And really the book frames the content for some of our discussion today. And what it helps us do is when we find ourselves in a situation, I found myself in this situation as a sales and business professional in the past, where sometimes you just feel a bit unsure of where to go next to grow your business. You might find that you're not as consistent as you'd like to be in your performance, and perhaps performance is a bit underwhelming for you. And maybe for teams, if you lead teams, and that can sometimes lead you to feel as a leader or as someone who wants to be a high performer, sometimes that can leave you feeling a bit overwhelmed. And what we help our clients to do, and leaders and teams, is to move from that position through structure and kind of coaching and guidance to get them to start to tap into that resourcefulness, that capability that they know they've got, to regain that self-confidence that we know is so important in sales and business, so that they can start to deliver more consistently, communicate more effectively, and really help them to kind of elevate their own performance. And that can be incredibly powerful when we get that right. So that's what we, as a business team, that's what we're looking to achieve and help our clients to achieve on an ongoing basis. And I mean, I'm delighted with the work that we've done. I've been running Focus Growth about 3.5 years now. And we really have got to the point where we're looking at, we work with some market leading companies. It is really for us about sharing as much best practice as we can and helping a lot of our clients to see the roadmap to best in class performance, to looking at market leading growth and how they do that. And you'll see some of the organizations that we are privileged to work with on this chart at the moment. But it really is about understanding what does world-class look like and how do we help our clients to tap into that. So that's a little bit about me and the work that we do. We've over the last, as I said, I've only been running the business about 3.5 years, and we've trained over 1,500 business and sales professionals they're using our models, principles, systems, and really finding that they help them drive higher performance and growth in their businesses. So some really good outcomes from our clients. So that's a little bit about me. Now, I'd love to learn a little bit more about you. So let me just pop up. I've got a poll for you. I'd love you to just answer this question. So if you described your role, how would you best describe your role in your organization? So you just click on whichever one of those is most appropriate. So are you business owner, business leader, sales leader, a high-performing sales or business professional, aspiring high-performing sales or business professional? You might be a marketer, or you might have a different role from that. And if you've got another role than that, just drop that in the chat for us so that we can see the different roles that we've got. And as soon as the poll's ended, let's have a look for it. If you could carry on, if anybody hasn't had the chance to complete it yet, we've got 5 of 8, 5 of 8, 6 of 8. Thank you, everybody. 7, 1 more to go, and we'll have a full 8 of 8. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much. So let me share those results with you. This is who we've got on the line today. So we have 1 business leader, 1 sales leader, 1 high-performing salesperson, 4 aspiring. So thank you for your honesty. And 1 other in the chat. So I don't know who the 1 other is, but if you drop that in the chat, we'll let you know. Thank you, everybody. That's great. Now, I said that today we would be looking at an opportunity to talk to each other as well. So I don't want you to feel like you just have to sit there and hear me all the time. We have 8 people on today, so we're going to open up. I'm going to create a couple of breakout rooms, and I'm going to invite you in. So there'll be a 4 in the room. I'm going to assign automatically, so it's just going to drop you into a room in a moment. I'm just going to ask you to do a round of introductions. So here's your challenge. Try and do that in under a minute per person. So just think about introducing yourself, your role and the company you work for. And if you then think, just share one thing that you're hoping to get from this workshop. What's the one thing you'd like to get from this workshop? And then when we come back, I'd like you to drop that one thing into the chat so that we can make sure, and I'll monitor the chat, we'll make sure that you'll get that one thing from today's session. So I'll open the rooms, we'll give you 5 minutes, so you've got a minute for orientation and then a minute per person. I'll drop you a quick note on the chat and then we'll be back in 5 minutes. So over to you guys and see you back here in 5 minutes. The recording. So if I can ask you just to drop into the chat, what was your one thing? You've introduced yourselves to each other, so hopefully that was useful getting to meet some new people in sales and business. Just drop into the chat. What is your one thing? What's the one thing that you shared that you were hoping that you'd get from today's workshop? And if there's something more specific, the better. I'm happy to kind of make sure that we capture those, and I'll make sure that we get the specific outcomes that you're looking for as well. So thank you, Diane. I'm looking to obtain information on how to help my sales team embrace hybrid selling, how they can get to the decision maker. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Diane. That's great. Lindsay, how to help my team adapt to accept the new world of hybrid selling. Yeah, great. Thank you. Laura, I'm hoping to pick up any hints, tips about when looking for new business, how to make sure you're speaking to the correct people and having valuable conversations. Okay, thank you, Laura, that's great. McLean, I don't know if that's a surname, McLean, but I'll call you that if that's okay. How to build relationships over professional platforms, i.e. LinkedIn. Okay, yeah, we'll certainly look at key messaging. Okay, good. Ashutosh, tips for cold interactions. Yeah. Andy Burnage, tips to maximize my cold calling efforts and also maximize the opportunities from existing customers. Okay, great. Thank you, Andy. Barry, I don't have a specific point. Really look for a new approach to working in the more online-based world. Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Barry. I'm pretty confident that we'll be sharing some insights that everybody will get some form of resolution, or you'll get a movement towards that outcome. So thank you. Have I missed anything? I don't think so. Okay, good. I'll have those in my mind. I'll check back in on those as we go through the session. Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. That's superb. So we know that things have changed in the sales environment, okay? And in the last 16 months, we've kind of been through one extreme and back to another. For many of us, things have opened up more, but it's really interesting. I had a conversation with one of my clients who is the MD of quite a large company recently. And she was saying to me that the transition she had noticed was that 16 to 18 months ago, for her sales team, she was saying to them, if you're not in front of customers, like in person, if you're not on the territory in the field, I'd really like to understand what's preventing you from doing that. Okay, so what is it that's causing you not to be out on the road? And that conversation has reversed. So she's now saying, I'd really like to understand what it is that's driving you to have to be in person with somebody. Can you manage it another way? So we have a lot of organizations have shifted their perspective. It's been almost a paradigm shift from one to the other. And that's interesting in itself. But, the offices of a lot of our customers are still empty, right? People are still working from home, and that makes it even more difficult to connect, reach, and engage customers. So we know the world's changed and we have to embrace that change, but it's knowing how to do it. Now, most people are spending an enormous amount of time on Teams and on Zoom. We are case in point right now, right? Case in point, we're on a Zoom call for 90 minutes. And a lot of people are struggling because that's all they're doing. There's so much time spent online that it's not only affecting our customers and our clients, it's affecting us as sales and business professionals. So we're spending more time online, they're spending more time online. And if you'd asked us pre-pandemic, if we were locked down and we spent more time online and we weren't having to travel, would you have more or less free time? What would you have said? Well, blimey, without all that commuting, I'm going to have loads of free time. I'd love to see a show of hands. How many people have got more free time now? Not a single person has more free time. And so we've just expanded the amount of meetings, the amount of interactions, the amount of messages, the amount of stuff that's coming at us has just increased. And it's increased for our customers as well. So we have to appreciate that. It's increased for our customers as well. And that's why it has become so much more difficult to connect with key people. So I'd love to get your views on this. I've got another poll for you. This is a bit of I know the answer to this question, obviously, but I'll be interested in your perspective on this. Let me share the poll with you. Second poll, how many touch points do you think it takes to engage a new customer? So the amount of times a customer has to have some form of interaction with your organization. So is it 1, 2 to 7, 7 to 12, 13 to 19, 19 to 27, 28 to 36? This is a piece of work that was done by this organization called Tangible Words. It's some research data from last year. So it was just as we hit the pandemic, they conducted this research. So where are we? Everyone's answered. Brilliant. Let me just end the poll, share the results. So what do we think? We think between 2 and 7 or between 7 and 12. Okay, so let me stop sharing and let me tell you the result. Believe it or not, the amount of interactions or touch points a potential new customer needs to have in a B2B environment is between 28 and 36.
Wow.
The number has soared. And the reason for that is the multiple, but the main one is that there's so much noise coming at our customers. And I'm sure you've all experienced it yourself. More messages on LinkedIn, more messages on all social media platforms, email traffic, everything's increased. And so in order for us to be able to cut through that, we've got to think differently about how we approach customers. Okay, so we've got to think differently. Now, one of the other things that's interesting is that if you look at the research by a number of companies, one of them was Harvard Business Review, where they researched some of the larger organizations that did some kind of demographic research. And what they found was that more than half, their numbers show 55% of people working in B2B sales had never been trained on selling and influencing. So they've been trained on the product portfolio, they've been trained on the market, been trained on the products, been trained on the company, but not actually been trained on selling and influencing. And I don't know, for those of you who have been through sales training, professional sales training, you will know the difference it makes. I remember the first 2 years of my sales career, and I worked for a company, a really nice company, but they didn't invest in sales training. So they did all the product training, they did the market training, you knew the portfolio, but actually the structure of a sales call, how to manage a territory, how to engage customers, how to ask good questions, how to join up the sales process so that you were aligned with the buying process. None of that work was done. And I, on a personal level, spent 2 years trying to figure it out. And when I left that organization, went to the next organization, in the first 6 months, I was trained. And at the time, it was Professional Selling Skills 3. I missed versions 1 and 2. I'm not sure what happened to them. But PSS 3. And whilst it was complicated and quite detailed, actually a number of the principles just really helped me to join up the dots in a way that I hadn't before. And the difference in my first 2 years in sales versus my 3rd year in sales, having been trained, were like chalk and cheese. So if you haven't had that chance to invest in yourselves or your teams, I really would encourage you to do some work on sales process, the actual selling process rather than just your portfolio. And, for those of you who are kind of still figuring out the hybrid environment, to a certain degree, I think we all are, right? So whilst I'm training on it, every day I figure out a little extra nuance to it. We have to recognize that whilst everything's changed, the market's changed, we must change too. Okay, and if I love this quote from Einstein. Literally, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. We've got to embrace change. We've got to learn new techniques, new methods. So let me tell you about the feedback from my clients. Let me tell you what my clients are telling me are their challenges, and then we'll look at your challenges and we'll make sure that we address those as we go through the kind of next part of the webinar. But the first thing is around confidence, and I don't know if you've experienced this yourselves in the last 16 months, but there's been almost an erosion of confidence for a number of people. In sales roles, we're normally interacting with people, we want to be in person, we want to be having conversations. And as that starts to become more difficult, even some of our better customers start to put distance between us because they're so busy, because they're struggling with it themselves. And what my clients are telling me is that their own teams are sometimes struggling to engage clients, even really good clients, with meaningful value-led messaging. Okay, the messaging that they are putting out, it just doesn't seem to be resonating with customers. The second thing is that because they're pushing out messaging and it's not resonating, that tends to affect their own mindset, their own psychology, and their ability to persevere until they either succeed, or if they are rejected, accept that rejection, kind of see it for what it is and move on, has become eroded. So there's a challenge in kind of maintaining that positivity. And so they become unsure of the right approach and they start to hesitate and pull back, right? And this isn't conscious. They're not saying to themselves, okay, I'm going to pull back. Actually, there's almost like a creeping fear that starts to set in, and they find other things to do. Perfectly relevant, perfectly rational things to do, but it's not reaching out to customers. That's the challenge number one. Challenge number two is around skills. So mindset first and then skills. And when it comes to skills, if we don't cultivate the right skills, i.e., for me, before I was trained in sales, I thought the right sales skills were being able to eloquently pitch. Okay. What I learned subsequently was that actually questioning and listening was far more powerful. Being able to really engage customers, dig deep, go under the surface of what's happening for them so that I really understood what they wanted, needed, desired, or what they were trying to avoid, or the problems that they had. But you can't get to that. You can't kind of unearth that nugget if you don't learn to question and listen really effectively. And combined with that is being comfortable with silence, to getting comfortable to ask a question, let the customer think and process. And how many times have we all been in situations with salespeople perhaps, where the nerves set in, and so they start talking. And when they over talk and they're pitching features, we do this, we can do that, we can do the other, the customer starts to tune out. And so without the right skills, we tune the customer out of the opportunity. And without going through that vital sales stage, we can't connect the dots for the customer. So we're no longer creating solutions to problems. We're just pitching stuff at customers and seeing what will stick. So we've got to get this balance right around the skill set that's required for selling. And then the third challenge, I'm only going to cover these three areas today, but the third challenge is around consistency, performance and delivery in a consistent manner. And what my clients tell me, the first is that actually having a defined sales process, we do this step, then this step, then this step, then this step, enables them, if they've got it, to know what to fix if a part of the process is wrong. But if they can't describe the process, if the sales teams can't go, well, these are the stages that we go through, when it is going wrong, they don't know how to fix it. And that is a key challenge. Second is that because they're not using a structure to sell, influence, and communicate, that they get this huge variation in, one customer call goes really well, but they're not sure why. Another customer call doesn't go so well, and again, they're not sure why. So that variation in performance starts to hurt results, hurt the business, and in some instances can even damage the relationship with the customer. And systemizing, so if people haven't systemized the approach, it's really difficult to deliver consistently, either as an individual delivering month on month, quarter on quarter, or as an organizational team. And so you find that results either plateau, you've got some people spiking, some people declining, or they can decline. And that feels to the client like we're just wasting opportunity. We just need to get some of this potential tapped and really working for us. So unintended consequence, normally, to be honest, is that the sales leader then starts to turn up the pressure. We don't necessarily kind of regroup and say, right, let's get some measures in place. They kind of start to turn up pressure, and as I say, unintentionally. And teams then start to get stressed. When sales teams get stressed, they become anxious, and that affects motivation and morale. And then without intentionally doing it, they start to disengage. They might start to resist coaching and direction. They become more defensive about the work they're doing. Well, it's not as easy as you think. The hybrid environment's difficult. Customers don't seem to engage and respond. And so more pressure gets applied and the cycle continues, okay? And that pressure tends to be, really results focused, pipeline focused, and kind of lagging metrics, stuff that happens after the quality and valuable work's done. So performance and results become more erratic, teams become overwhelmed, staff churn starts to increase, customer satisfaction can reduce, and company reputation could be put at risk. Now, this is worst case scenarios, but this is generally speaking, when I have conversations with clients who approach me, they're kind of at a point where we want to avoid this happening. We can see it coming. We want to avoid it happening. So I would love for you guys, as I was going through that, there will have been things going through your mind where you thought, that's interesting. There's something in there that I should be thinking about myself. So I'd love to hear, what's your number one challenge? So I'm going to drop you back into your rooms and just what number one challenge you're facing. We drop that. I know you've talked about challenge at the moment, but let's have a conversation. 5 minutes on your number one challenge, and then we'll bring you back. The recording. So number one challenge, I'd love to hear what you discussed. I know we talked about what you were looking to get from the webinar. This may be slightly different. What's the number one challenge you're facing? Diane, thank you. Embracing the new environment and staying motivated. Yeah, that is a very popular challenge, or unpopular, depending on how you look at it. But yeah, embracing that new environment, staying motivated. And interesting, that's similar to Barry mentioned before, actually. He put another comment in to say the one issue that he foresees with not being able to have real face-to-face meetings is the mental health of people who have spent their lives in-person meetings, and now we're all, cooped up running those meetings on Zoom and on Teams. It is very difficult. Yeah, I completely agree. Lindsay, thank you. Keeping the team motivated and accepting that the way they work needs to and has changed. Yeah, absolutely. It's so true. It's understanding how we manage that situation, engaging them. Andy Burnage, Andy, engaging new customers via Teams or Zoom as opposed to face-to-face, engaging them on Teams and Zoom, and we'll cover that, Andy. Yeah, thank you. Barry, for me, it's getting new customers to engage with the new level of time challenges we face, as it appears no one has the time to talk. Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? And Barry, you'll remember, I'm sure, from before in your career where you go to see a customer and they say, "Oh, I've only got 2 minutes. I've only got 2 minutes." And you go, "Oh God, the pressure's on." And then before you know it, 15 minutes has elapsed. And they're going, "Oh, just cancel my next meeting or just push that back. It's okay, this is important. I need to finish this conversation." So remember that can very often be a bit of a facade. It's not always real. It's our job to cut through that. And really engage the customer, because if I asked you, have you got time for a 90-minute webinar, you'd probably say no. But something's drawn you in here today. So, and I'm the same. It takes we have to think about our key messaging to get through to the customer. But really good point, Barry. Thank you, Laura. Speaking to relevant people as the correct contact are overwhelmed with people wanting to speak to them, and they push back. And gatekeeping is a bigger issue than ever before. Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree, Laura. So it is about getting through to the right people with the right messaging so that they want to engage with you. Okay, good. Thank you. McLean, engaging with prospects effectively over different platforms during the pandemic. Many are unresponsive. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. We'll have a look at that as well, McLean. Barry, you say that, but in an industry that is significantly expanding and has a lack of manpower, it's a real issue. Yes, agreed. And I wasn't meaning to kind of belittle the issue, Barry. I guess more about context, thinking about, okay, we know we've really got to get that messaging right in order to connect with a customer. Okay, good. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, everybody. Excellent. Okay, so here's an overview of what we do as part of our programs, and some of you may have had some exposure to this already. I know Diane will have seen some of the content that we cover already, but really what we're trying to do as part of the resolution to many of these issues. So we think that the hybrid environment is the challenge. It's part of the challenge. Okay, it's part of the challenge, and the reason I say it's part of the challenge is because if you look at what's working right now for the sales teams that are managing to cut through, maintain growth, keep customers engaged, actually what they've done is they've gone back to some of the foundational sales principles they know work. They've gone back to value-led messaging. They've gone back to questions as a way to create curiosity within customers. They've gone back to understanding what the customer outcome is 6 to 12 months down the line, not here and now. They've gone back to really focusing on the customer, centralizing everything around the customer, even when that means there might not be an immediate opportunity. And that is what is creating engagement for customers here and now. So the way that we do that is to go through a system and a structure that we know enables us to find that route through. Okay, and it is about becoming, it's kind of almost going back to, right, how do I become better at selling and influencing? How do I become world class? What are the market leaders doing? And we unpack all of that through a more intensive program that really digs deep into your portfolio, deep into your customers' world, deep into the messaging and the questions that you can ask that really unlock that opportunity. But it's not something you do, it's not a quick fix. You don't do it in one session. It's a series of kind of deep dives into where we need to get to. We do that through a process and a series. A process you can do on your own, but it is a process. So I'm going to bring you back to some principles that you will know intuitively, but you may not have thought of in this way. And this is really going to help you, especially as you start to think about your approach going forward. think about the foundations of sales success or personal success, effectiveness, in this way. The first way is to think about psychology. Okay, so think about the way in which we manage ourselves, the way that we prime our mind, the way that we think about ourselves, the way that we think about the customer, the way that we think about how we interact with a customer. Are we on parity? Are we worthy? Do we deserve to be there? All of that is psychology, right? It's really important, because if we miss that out and we just focus on messaging, or we focus on skills, or we focus on something else, then eventually we're going to trip ourselves up, because at some point the psychology is going to get the better of us, either in a key clutch moment, or in a high pressure situation, or with a key customer, or when we're trying to reach someone more senior than our customer and we don't believe we're worthy of that interaction. Psychology will trip us up. So we have to focus on psychology. Okay. The second area is to think about the skills that we need to develop that enable us to interact better with customers, manage relationships, join up the dots, create solutions, do all the things that we know are really vital to moving the customer along where we need them to. So that's the skills that we need. We'll look at that in a bit more detail as well. And then the third area is around systemizing structure, process. So if we get these in the wrong order, if we just, classic situation, I've had this many times in the past, personally as a salesperson in the past, and as a sales manager, as a business leader, where we've deployed a CRM system, for example, or a new system of some description. We just haven't really thought about whether or not people know how to use the system, whether we've trained them sufficiently, whether we've explained the reason why they should be doing it and how it fits with their work and how it underpins productivity and effectiveness in selling. And all of a sudden, nobody's using it, or they're using it erratically, or they're doing the minimum effort. And if we don't think about change initiatives in the way that we work in this way, we can really prevent ourselves from performing at the highest level. So I share this with you as a principle. I share it with many of my clients. It really helps sometimes to unlock additional opportunity. So when we think about that kind of step by step, the first part, we talk about positive psychology. So in all of the programs I run with clients, we will start with psychology. And what we're really trying to do is increase self-confidence, increase self-belief, and this motivation that we can and will succeed. Okay. And when we do that, when people believe they can succeed, they tend to have a new level of belief in themselves, and they almost become unstoppable. It's almost difficult to slow them down. When we get them using proven positive psychology, they learn to manage themselves first. So when you manage yourself first and you're confident to do that every time, everything else seems to just fall into place. So remember that the most important thing we can ever do is manage our emotions and our feelings. But sometimes we overlook that. We overlook how important that is. And then thirdly, when you learn to manage yourself, you feel like you can try a bit harder, persevere a bit longer, work seems more enjoyable, easier even. And so once we start with this as a frame of reference in our thinking around how we help our teams and ourselves succeed, actually managing ourselves is really important. We talked, many of you have said in the chat, actually, how do we get used to this new environment? If we're used to being with people, how do we now manage that transition? Well, a lot of that is in our mind. A lot of that's a mindset shift that we have to make, to start to lean into the new environment, see the hybrid selling opportunity that exists for us, and think about how do we maximize and leverage it. So it's all psychology. So we start with psychology. Then we think about skills. Okay, so focus on the right skills, sales and influencing skills. In this perspective, the other area I focus very often with clients on is coaching skills. So, coaching and selling are very similar, because it's about pulling and extracting information, insights, and motivation from customers and team members. Okay, and when we do that, when we learn and practice the right skills, we can improve performance rapidly, because we know our portfolio, we know our market, we know our clients. When we take a more skillful approach, we get results quite quickly. When we know how to engage customers every time, our satisfaction and the customer's satisfaction improves, because we stop trying to pitch them a program or a product. We start talking to them about the problems we know they're facing. We start thinking about the outcome that we create for them. We start thinking longer term in the messaging, and that really does start to resonate more authentically with the customer. And so relationships get better, team engagement improves, performance and results improve. And sometimes you can see this in quite a short period of time. And then finally, we look at structure and systemizing so that it improves consistency. Because once we've learned the skills and we've primed ourselves, we have to be able to reproduce those results over and over again. So the simpler the structure, the better. And if we get a simple structure in place, it helps improve that consistency. One of the key principles I use in a lot of the programs that I've seen work in the past, not just my own, but others, is when we use like simple mnemonics so that you can remember the structure. It makes it easy to follow, easy to use, easy to repeat and to coach if you're in a leadership position. And then once we get those in place and embedded and people start to realize the value of them because they're delivering better results, things become more predictable, growth accelerates, customers are more satisfied, our teams are more engaged, and everybody wins. So you can see how if you haven't thought about it like this, whether you do this with me or anybody else, start to think about, okay, how do I manage myself and my psychology? How do I get myself into a really, a place where I feel confident, I believe in myself, and my team do the same? Which are the skills we really need to focus on to help us move forward? And how do we systemize an approach that everybody can follow? And when we do this, confidence improves, motivation improves. When we know that actually we're following a structure, we can start to kind of almost relax into it, know that we're following the right steps. We focus on client activities and opportunities, key messaging. We feel more capable and consistent. And, our own intrinsic motivation improves, retention improves, people enjoy the work. And as a natural byproduct, growth increases, right? Growth escalates. And it's a really important thing to consider. We should always think about the direction of travel. What is it we want? And how are we going to help ourselves and our teams to get there? What do we want? How do we get there? Really important to do that. So think about those key principles. We've got psychology, we've got skills, and kind of structure systems. If you and your own organizations thinking about one area for focus, which is the one area that you think you should be focusing on based on kind of thinking about those three key principles? So let me open the rooms and just have a few minutes on that. I'll give you 5 minutes on that, and then we'll regroup, work out what your one thing is, and then we'll kind of dig a bit deeper into that. Okay, 5 minutes, and then we'll regroup. One thing you should focus on. Just drop into the chat. What was your one thing that your team should focus on based on those key principles? Just this is interesting because it will get you, hopefully it's getting you to think slightly differently about the approach you're taking and the things that are happening with your own teams. Right, okay, great. What's the one thing for you guys? So you're tapping away. Diane, thank you. Yeah, basic skills and how they relate to today's environment. Absolutely. Almost going back to some of the fundamentals. Yeah, great. Andy, prioritizing the low-hanging fruit. Yeah, completely. Stuff that is hopefully easy and almost in front of you to be able to address. Yeah, good. Lindsay, a review of basic selling skills, but phrased in a way that these should be reviewed in our current situation. Yeah.
Same as Diane.
Yeah, I'll tell you.
Fair idea.
I'll tell you what I do. I years ago I switched the word basic to fundamental.
That's a better word.
Because if I say basic, you immediately think, oh, here we go. You're trying to teach me to suck eggs. If I say fundamental, it feels a bit more like, okay, this is stuff that I probably should just revisit. So yeah, sometimes language can be really interesting in just helping us to get our teams on board. But really good. Yeah, back to the fundamentals. Yeah. Barry, finding the battles we can win. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. A bit like that low-hanging fruit. Which are the kind of key customers that we think actually we can tune in here really most effectively. McLean, learn carefully about the target customers. Yeah. Laura, understanding sales motivators to personalize and target selling. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Very good. Thank you, guys. That's excellent input. I've got a few things in front of me based on the conversations that we've been having through the chat. So I've got some other stuff here that we'll cover. But in our last 25 minutes, can't believe how quickly the session's going. In our last 25 minutes, I want to share with you some stuff that I think is going to be really valuable. So this is specifically about hybrid selling and virtual selling. Let's cover hybrid selling first. So I have 3 hybrid selling principles that I work with my clients on, okay? So the first one is really simple, sounds simple, right? But it's really effective if you can get this right. Decide which clients should be in person versus online, right? Which client meeting should be in person versus online, and have a criteria. So that criteria might be right. For certain priority customers, we're going to make every effort to be in person wherever possible. For certain stages in the sales process, earlier the better. We're going to make sure they're in person. When there's a specific reason for the meeting, we're going to make sure that's in person. If the client doesn't respond well to a virtual meeting, we might have to prioritize that type of client in person. We might also start to think about travel time and territory management, but really start to think first and foremost, right, let's not allow this to be random. Let's put some structure in place that gives guidance for ourselves and our teams about what frame of reference makes sense for in-person versus online meetings, because we don't want people traveling 2 hours to have a check-in and a coffee with a customer when they could have done that virtually and been more effective. So it's just about setting that expectation and agreeing the expectation with ourselves and our teams. Second, being clear on the priority tasks alongside selling. There's nothing more frustrating for a sales team than to hear, well, the biggest priority is to be out with customers, right? And then as sales leaders and business managers, we're sending them reports saying, can we have that by tomorrow? And they're like, hold on a minute, I've got a full day of calls booked, right? So let's not allow those short deadlines to become an issue or a barrier. Let's figure out what are the list of ongoing tasks? What are the things that we know we're going to need to be completing as part of the sales role alongside selling, right? Let's rank those tasks in order of priority. Let's make sure we have a weekly schedule and a cycle, and make sure that once we've prioritized those key tasks, that we complete them in order of priority, because there are times when we can't get everything done. We all have it, right? If this is news to anybody, you're never going to get to the end of your to-do list, right? It's just not possible. Someone's always adding something on, right? But when we have that to-do list ranked and prioritized, and we work through it in priority order, and someone says, why didn't you get to this? You can say, well, actually, because I got to this, this, and this. Which one of those is more important? And all of a sudden, we start to feel more effective. Really starts to improve our confidence and our capability, not just as salespeople, because we have much more in our roles than that, but as business managers, territory managers, and sales professionals. And then the third principle is beyond the week, start to map out a cycle, mix clients, tasks, meetings, blend them as part of the approach, and think, if I start to time block my diary over a period of a month at a time, allocate a cycle to the key tasks, key activities, key customers, and each week I check in and I'm reviewing and amending the next month and flexing that as I learn what works and what doesn't, that's a really powerful and effective way to gain greater sense of control and momentum over my own diary, my territory, key customers, opportunities, and the way that I engage with the work that I do. So share that with you. When you come back to those, we talk about fundamentals, right? These are 3 fundamentals that when I revisit them with clients, they kind of go, oh God, I know I should be doing this, but I'm not doing it. Okay, so this is like a gift. Give it to yourself and your teams. Just take them back to these 3 key principles. They really, really will help as you think about this hybrid selling. So that's the hybrid approach, okay? Now, in addition to the hybrid approach, when we're selling in a virtual environment, on Zoom, on Teams, there are a number of considerations that if we can start to reflect on them and improve our practice in these areas, they'll really help. So let me run through these. I won't go through them too quickly, but I think it's important that we go through them. And then we'll wrap up with some with Q&A, a couple of other points, and we'll close our session by 5. Okay, so these 12 key principles or tips for remote and virtual selling involve the first 7 around how we set ourselves up to virtually and remote sell. The next 4 are around skills we need to develop. And then the final 12th principle or tip is around setup. Again, it's about acceleration. How do we accelerate? So first one is basic. We kind of covered this as part of today's discussion. Remember and ensure that we follow our proven sales process as part of our virtual meeting. Just because we're now virtual or online, it doesn't mean we just throw away the stuff that we know works in person. Think of it as an in-person meeting. And if you can get that in your mind, it really does start to help you think differently about the engagement. So don't think of it as a virtual meeting, think of it as an in-person meeting, follow your process. Second is about the environment that we set up. So set up a professional environment. Think about yourself. So you will notice today that I'm standing. Diane will know that in meetings with me, I'm standing, right? When I have an important call with a customer, I stand. When I have an important meeting, I stand. And I have a desk riser that allows me to drop it when I want to do, deep work, writing, email, stuff that it doesn't require me to stand. But when I want to be able to project the very best possible presence and energy, I stand. And that standing elevates my performance. I know it, so I use it. And the other thing that does for me, it allows me to have this really good angle on my camera, right? So I have a separate webcam. The angle is horizontal. And I think about lighting so that it's balanced. So I don't want any shadows really being cast anywhere. And I want a background that is okay. It's like kind of pleasing on the eye, but not distracting. Pleasing on the eye, but not distracting. If I've got stuff that distracts people, it then interferes with my ability to influence. So the background should be complementary, not distracting. So just what I would say is take a bit of time to think about the environment you set up, advise your teams, think about the environment you set up so that it optimizes your performance and is easy for the customer to interact with you. Okay, next is about the platform. So I've spent hours, far too many hours on Zoom and Teams, understanding how it all works, how to record, how to pause, how to create breakout rooms, how to create polls, how to do all sorts of stuff on it. And I've done that because it's my domain. When I invite a client to meet with me online, it's not the same as me going to see them. I'm now inviting them online, and I see that as my responsibility to take a leadership role, to know the platform, to know the domain, and to be able to lead in a positive way. So the customer feels like they get a controlled experience, not one where it's a bit haphazard and I'm going, oh, hold on a minute, let me just find out how to share this slide, let me find this. And then they're thinking, why have I spent time here with Justin? Actually, I'm so well practiced, it's become second nature. And I'd say if you haven't leaned into the virtual environment, lean in. There's all sorts of YouTube tutorials, there's all sorts of stuff. Just get comfortable with it and recognize that it's your responsibility to lead that meeting and know the domain. Fourth is about, we talked about setting up the environment. Now we're talking about managing the environment. So one of the things that happens when we're on Teams meetings or Zoom meetings is that we can get distracted, right? Most of us have got other people working at home as well. If you're about to go into something important with a client, just manage the environment in advance. Tell other people you'll be in a meeting. Minimize distractions, shut down your email or turn off any notifications. Put your phone on silent, put your tablet on silent. Nowadays, even watches will bing and bong at you. So silence everything in the background so that actually you can get in the zone and you don't distract yourself from that meeting. Fifth is about reasons why. So we had this came up at quite a few times in the chat, okay? How do I get a customer to meet with me? Now, we have to make sure that whenever we're meeting a client, especially when we're online, there's a really strong reason why they should be on the call, right? Not about us. We don't need the motivation. The client needs the motivation. So one of the ways we do that, I have 3 principles that ensure you have a really strong reason why. So the first principle is about putting a message to the customer that if you read it as the customer, only serves as a benefit for them. So it's customer only centered. Okay, has nothing to do with you, your product, the company. It's just about what's in it for the customer. Okay, and check the language of your messaging. The second is that message for the customer is also focused on an outcome you intend to deliver for them. Okay, so it's customer only, not customer first, and it's outcome for the customer. And then a third principle that is really powerful is to position things in a way that I call the power of peers, right? So rather than say, I'd like to talk to you about how I can help you with this, to say, I'd love a conversation with you to share with you feedback from other clients about how they've delivered this working in partnership with us and how it might work for you. And whilst that might sound like semantics, there is a massive difference between me saying, other clients like you get this result and I'd like to share how they do it, versus I'd like to talk to you about how I can help you. Huge difference, because I'm immediately creating credibility simply through the language that I'm using. So you take those 3 principles, outcome for the customer, language that only talks about the customer and not you, and then talks about other customers and the value they get. When you combine those 3 principles, your messaging really just elevates in attractiveness and attention for your potential clients. So really interesting and powerful principles. So once you've done that, once you've got that message and you've connected with the customer, make sure that when you send an invitation, you send an agenda and you use that compelling line, the 3 principles for the customer, and you use that as your compelling heading. So put that in the heading of the meeting, so that when the customer sees it and they think about the meeting coming up with you, they're much less likely to want to cancel, because they're fully engaged as part of that messaging that you've got them on the call in the first place with. 7 is about getting onto the meeting, and you'll notice right at the start today, I invited you to come on camera. And appreciate not everyone can, because some people have bandwidth issues, some people aren't able to get on camera all the time for meetings. But always ask, right? Always ask your customer to come on camera, and recognize that even if they don't use their camera, don't turn yours off because they haven't got theirs on. Leave yours on, because there's a big power of influence that happens when we can see somebody. It doubles our ability to influence and connect. Even if I can't see you, the fact that you can see me means that I'm able to have some form of connection with you and strengthen that connection. So put yours on, even if they don't, even if it feels really uncomfortable, work through it, get used to it. Number 8, so this is about skills, right? So we're moving from structure and setup to skills. There's one thing that's really important as part of our virtual meetings. When we look at the screen, we break eye contact with the people that we're talking to. When we look at the camera, we really deepen eye contact. And I'll show you a tip that I use when I'm not presenting. And that is that I put the person's image underneath my camera. What it means I can do then is just flick my gaze between the camera lens and the person's image, so I can still check that they're engaged, that they are with me, that we're having a good conversation. But I can look at the camera because I know that creates eye contact. And it takes a bit of retraining, but it's well worth doing. Once you've retrained your gaze to the camera lens, your ability to influence and connect with people really is amplified. So just retrain yourself to look at the camera lens. And then think about rapport. So rapport is the first stage of our sales process, the one that we teach. Get the customer interested and engaged. Ask questions about them. Start with the relationship. Don't make it go on too long. Okay, so there's a fine line here. Don't spend 15 minutes checking in with a customer. but recognize that we have to reconnect and reestablish rapport at every stage of our sales process. Every time we re-engage a customer, we get them flowing. Once we sense that connection, then we can start the sales process. But until we do, we shouldn't start selling. Number 10 is about sound and audio. So make sure that when we're talking to customers, you know where your microphone is so that you can be heard clearly. So the customer doesn't have to say, oh, sorry, what did you say? Make sure that you also then create some space in the conversation. Get used to putting in small pauses so that you're not overlapping when the customer might want to respond to a question. And that way, when you start to just slow the pace down, introduce small pauses, make sure you're talking into your microphone, the communication with the customer just improves so much more, and so does your confidence in managing. 11 is about a summary. So the power of summarizing at the end of one of those calls. It's so easy to overlook, but allow yourself time, manage the time of the meeting, make sure that you allow time for summarizing at the end, and then confirm the actions that you'll take, confirm the actions that your customer will take, and then future pace out the next few steps. This is what will happen next. Then I'd like to recommend this next. Then where do you think we should go after that? And once you start to map that out and you get the customer committed to doing that, what you'll find is that you maintain momentum through your sales process, and you don't have the issue with trying to pick up with additional meetings and following up with the customer. Always book and schedule that next meeting in the meeting that you're in. And then finally, this is a kind of tip that a lot of clients have found really valuable, is thinking about how well you can mix virtual and reality. So if you've got a product-led business, if there's something, whether it's a sample, an asset, or something physical that you can send the customer in advance of a key meeting, and you send that to arrive the day before, maybe with some instructions or a short video you might want to record, you can actually find that you blend a virtual meeting with a customer kind of feeling a physical interaction and engagement. And that can be really powerful if you've got the right portfolio and you've got the right customer in that meeting. So they have been incredibly valuable for my clients. I share them with you. I hope this is useful. I'm very happy to share this PDF of the slide deck with you as well. If anybody would like a copy, just drop me an email and I will do that. That concludes our top kind of 3 principles and 12 tips. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes in meeting rooms again. Just think about those key principles. I saw a lot of kind of notes, engagement, nodding and stuff through that. So just have a conversation with each other. What are the key kind of changes or adjustments you think you need to now make as part of your virtual and hybrid selling approach? I'll give you a few minutes, give you 4 minutes. We'll come back at 5:02, and then we'll wrap up. Welcome back. What were your key changes? Just drop them into the chat in our last few minutes. I'd love to hear those. And while you do that, I'll just on the slides, I'll just walk you through. There is, so obviously I run programs with organizations. So there are bespoke program options. I also run, for anybody who's interested, I run a sales mastermind program, which is the content for the book. We go through all of the content for the book. Starts with a scorecard, which is like a sales diagnostic. Once you've completed the diagnostic, you then get access to the online program, which is a 12-month series of access to the online network and a series of coaching videos. There's a 22-day coaching video program that walks you through completion of the program. There are monthly sales mastermind groups that are 90 minutes, a little bit like this, less content-based, more coaching and discussion. So people bring their live challenges. And we have a private WhatsApp group that we're able to kind of dip in and out of, share best practice. And there's continually evolving content. So this will go onto the platform, for example, as an additional resource for people. If anybody's interested, do let me know. I'd be very happy to have a conversation with you or your teams if you thought it was something you'd like to explore. Same with a bespoke program. I know that as you know, I work with a lot of large organizations anyway. And what we try and do as part of our mastermind groups is really kind of create a confidential, safe space. We're trying to build a community of high performers. We're trying to collaborate with ideas, overcoming challenges. There's quite a lot of camaraderie. We've got some interesting kind of characters, and really start to think about challenges that you face and challenging you to kind of elevate your performance. It can be really powerful as part of a group of high performers. When you're in this high performance environment, it does start to change your expectations and performance. So in terms of starting a journey, if you'd like to start a journey, there's a QR code there. Feel free to scan it, or feel free to connect with me on any of the social channels. The scorecard is free of charge, so you can access the scorecard, series of statements, fill that out. And at the end of that, there's also a free copy of the digital book, Inspire, Influence, Sales, for you to download at the end of the scorecard. So it's like a bonus item for you. So feel free to access the scorecard. If you would like to check out the program, the link to the online program, there are a series of the introductory modules that are on free preview, so you can actually look at it. Andy's got a book. Andy, thank you so much. I love that. I love seeing my own book played back at me. Thank you, Andy. That's brilliant.
I have to say, I got it passed to me by Victoria to read because she thought it'd be really interesting, and I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I am on holiday.
That's okay.
And it's going to be my poolside reading.
Excellent. I look forward to hearing your feedback.
Well, I say poolside reading. I'm not sure there's going to be that much sun in the Lake District.
Well,
I'm only joking. I'm going to Spain, but
very nice.
I've just had the QR code bounce on me.
Oh, that QR code's bounced?
Yeah. It just says a QR campaign has been disabled for some reason.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for letting me know, Barry. Barry, if you just,
no worries.
I'm at Justin Leigh on all channels. So if you just, if you go to Linktree and Justin Leigh, that will give you access to every way to contact me. But thanks for letting me know, Barry. I'll check that QR code offline. And just a little bit about the values of the organization. I'll send you this slide deck through. But one of the things that we try and do with clients is also get them thinking bigger than their organization, bigger than their teams. Think about, what are the things that they can do to positively impact not only their own communities, their customers, but things that they can do themselves. And one of the things that we do, I love to share this. I run a mental health group for men. So twice a month, we run regular walks where we kind of get out into nature, and it becomes a bit of a community of its own, and something I've been doing now for a little while. I always share it as something that I'm quite proud of to do in the business. I do it related to the business, and I lay it down as a bit of a challenge for people to say, if there was something you could do to make a positive impact to your local community, to people around you, actually, what would you do? So I share that as a bit of a final inspiring message as part of these sessions. Guys, if you would like to connect with me, please do. I look forward to hearing your feedback. We are at 5 o'clock, so you are welcome to leave. But if anybody has any questions or you want to check in with me one-to-one now, I'm happy to hang around for a little while. But if you have a hard stop at 5, please feel free to go.
I have to. But thank you very much, Justin. I will connect with you. It's very good. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you, Barry. Thank
you for
joining us.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. See you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.